Thursday, November 18th, and I'll call the meeting to order. I'll do the roll call of commissioners, and Brenda Blitman is here, and Commissioner Birch.
Present.
Commissioner Wickstrom. Here. Commissioner Colson.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
Commissioner Exton.
Here.
And Commissioner Roush.
Here.
Thank you very much. We'd like to welcome Commissioner Colson. This is his first hearing, and if you would take a minute and just introduce yourself, that would be great.
I'm Ryan Colson. Do I need to stand?
Do you not have a mic?
I do now. Look at that.
You're good.
It's missing the little thing, but I'm Ryan Colson. It's been an honor to be asked to come over here and help out and see what I can do. Help you guys. So, unless you guys want to know any other stuff.
Maybe what part of town you live in?
I live over by we'll be living over by Falcon Crest. So, and born and raised here.
So awesome. Well, thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Our first item is unfinished business. It's 2021-02204, ZOA, Ada County Development Services. And Mr. Letstrom, go ahead and give us the overview.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. The first item before you is a zoning ordinance text amendment from the Development Services Department aimed at eliminating a high number of variance requests that we've processed over the last 10 years. Each amendment will be explained in detail later in the presentation, but staff estimates the proposed amendments would have eliminated the need for approximately 1/3 of all those variances requested during that time. In addition, more than 80% of those variances were approved, so we feel pretty confident about making these amendments, considering almost all of them were granted. So, the first amendment concerns Ada County Code. Sorry, I'm adjusting my screen here real quick. Concerns Ada County Code Section 8-5-3-1, C.1, regarding size standards for accessory structures located within the front yard. The proposed amendment to this section of code would only make the maximum 50% of the footprint of the principal permitted dwelling or 15,000 square foot standard applicable to parcels less than 1 acre in size. So anything greater than that wouldn't be subject to that regulation. Sorry, my screen is froze here. There we go. Pictured here is a recent project involving this type of variance request. During the hearing for this item, multiple comments from the board called into question the value of requiring this building to be 1,500 square feet in size or less, particularly as the subject property was approximately 5 acres in size and the primary dwelling was larger than 10,000 square feet. So that is a recent example of one of those variance requests. Funny enough, this one was actually denied because there were a lot of other things going on with it. There was a height standard that wasn't being met and some other things, but it is a good representative example of kind of what we're looking at regarding that section of the code. The second and third amendments concern code sections 8-5-3-31, A.1 and A.2, which involves specific use standards for a contractor's yard or shop. The proposed amendments to these sections of code would reduce the 100-foot buffer to 50 feet for outdoor storage areas, would also allow the use of setbacks for the underlying zone for structures associated with office space, as well as parking areas for standard vehicles. Here's an example that I attempted to mock up. It kind of played with it a little bit, but this did receive approval for a variance to convert an existing home on site to an office. The building highlighted in red was located closer than 50 feet to the side property line, so that was the need for the variance there. And then the large green rectangle is attempting to depict that 100-foot buffer for the outdoor storage area, and as you can see, there would be portions of the outdoor storage area that would be encroaching past the 100-foot mark. So essentially, yeah, reducing that 100-foot buffer down to 50 feet and allowing essentially like office spaces and other associated structures like that, not necessarily like the heavy shop buildings or places with large equipment's being stored or things like that, but really more the administrative aspect of a contractor's yard, allowing those to make use of the underlying zone. And then the fourth and final amendment concerns Table 8-2B-2, which involves dimensional standards for the residential base districts. The proposed amendment would increase the maximum lot coverage in the RUT zone from 5% to 20%, which is in line with what is allowed for most of the other residential base districts, RSW being an exception to that. And interestingly enough, we already were allowing 20% for RUT zoned properties if they were non-conforming. So we were essentially giving more property rights to a property that didn't meet other dimensional standards. So we just thought this was an obvious one to make a change on. And then here's an example of one of those RUT parcel. You know, what triggered this, what pushed this project over the edge was an 828 square foot garage, pictured down here in the lower right, because they, you know, with that would exceed that 5% maximum. And this ultimately was approved as well. So all reviewing departments and agencies recommended approval of the proposed project with standard conditions. There was one statement of support from the Building Contractors Association of Southwest Idaho. Again, thanking staff for trying to make some of this a little bit easier and kind of recognizing that so many of these variances were being approved and resulting in a lot of additional time here for both property owners and staff and you as well. So in conclusion, staff recommend that you recommend approval to the board with staff's recommended findings of fact, conclusions of law, and conditions of approval. And I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you very much. What questions do the commissioners have? And I'll start down at that end. Any questions?
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Letson, so I had two questions for you. I had more, but you answered most of them through the presentation, so thank you. The first one, the question that I had was, what were the reasons that 20% was denied? Were those that were denied related specifically to these three amendments, or were they denied for other reasons?
Yeah, Chairman, Commissioner Roush, yes, oftentimes there were other factors involved in the variance request. Again, as I mentioned before, we had the example of the accessory structure out front that not only had a size issue, but had a height issue. You know, I apologize, I don't have a detailed record of every denial that occurred. In general, I did write down of the different types of variances that we're asking change on. You know, the accessory structure one approved 85% of the time. So we had 15% of those not being approved. And again, largely for maybe some other factor associated with the design of the building. The contractor yard, that's been approved 92% of the time, the reduction in those setbacks. And interestingly enough, the lot coverage was only approved 67% of the time, but there was a distinct period of time where it was one board and there were like no variances ever approved. Every other time that was requested, it was approved. So I think that was just maybe a philosophy that was occurring at that time regarding those RUT maximum coverage standards. You know, I will say that we've been rewriting our zoning code as well. And so the plan is to kind of absorb these into the new zoning code. And we've had a chance to talk to, you know, beyond the the BCA, we've talked to broad groups of the public about these particular amendments. And we've received nobody that has an issue with doing this. So, but yeah, that's the best answer I have for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead. Commissioner
One
Roush.
more question, follow-up, or not a follow-up, a new question. In the contractor's yard, the verbiage, standard vehicle parking areas. Looking through the county code, there's no definition of what that means. So how do we, is that well enough defined?
Yeah, Chairman, or Madam Chair, Commissioner Roush, I think that we could benefit potentially from a definition there. I think, speaking with our legal team who helped us draft the ordinance, they raised the same question, like what does this mean? You didn't have the advantage recently of seeing a contractor yard denied by the board, but that was large gravel trucks moving around on site, you know, the large loaders that dump. And so for us, standard, you know, I think we could make a distinction, anything requiring like a CDL or something like that. A commercial driver's license could potentially be that distinction in terms of the parking area there, but yeah, we don't have a definition that we're proposing at this time. It's kind of going to be up to director interpretation. So.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Commissioner Roush.
Mr. Letson, so then would verbiage, instead of standard vehicle parking, be non-commercial vehicle parking areas?
I think you could propose that, that amendment to staff's recommendation, and the board could consider it. I don't think there's any issue in doing that with your recommendation.
Okay.
if that's what the will of the commission is here.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Commissioner Helding? No, I'm sorry. Commissioner Wickstrom?
You always sat in the spot, I
I
think.
know he did.
Thank you, Mr. Letson. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just again, a couple quick ones that were answered previously, but on the 50-foot setback sounds great. It's just now you're allowing office space to be put in there, which kind of defeats the purpose of having a buffer zone in there and there's really no restrictions as far as how much can that go into the easement area, the buffer area. Does that then fall into what normal setbacks would be for property or for different structures?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Wickstrom, yes. So basically, we're talking about the administrative function. Like, what we find often is that someone will build a home at 25 feet because that's a pretty typical setback in a lot of these zones, and then they'll want to convert it to an office. And through that conversion process, they're now out of compliance with the current standard, which says structures have to be set to 50 feet. So we're trying to basically say, yeah, the majority of structures associated with the contractor yard or any non-admin related structures have to be at 50 feet, but again, that office space, we've identified really no challenge with the 25-foot setback there. And that's kind of the reason we've worded it the way that we have. And I think this is where Commissioner Roush is saying perhaps some additional description or definition might benefit. I mean, office space to me seems pretty straightforward, and we would hold all other structures to that 50-foot standard. But I'd love to hear what the commissioners think.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Letson. And I guess when I was hearing that, I was always thinking that the office would be attached to that new building. But you're right; it could be something that would be detached in another part of the lot. In which case, yeah, it would make sense that it would be able to go into that area, and also maybe that we could add something where existing previous residential or existing office space could be grandfathered in or would be acceptable.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Wickstrom, what we often see here is they have to go through a building permit process. And so our building team requires planning to sign off and say that this structure is in the right place. So yeah, there's always a building permit process to change the occupancy of the building from a residential to an office occupancy. And so we actually have the ability to be very specific about what's going on in that space moving forward. So that's why, again, staff wrote office space there. And the number of contractors at yards I've seen where it's like a mobile home or a stick-built home being converted to the office space, that really drove this one. It seems to me that we've run into that issue quite a bit with these structures that have been on site for 30 years and now they're something else and we're going to make them tear it down or try to move it or something. So.
But that could be something that could be put into the ordinance too, that to address what typically seems to be the problem in an existing structure on a site.
Yeah, I mean, I think, in my opinion, there's a balance to be struck between allowing like some non-conforming structure built right on the property line, like we'd want to resolve that. So that's why we landed on the 25-foot or whatever the underlying zone is, to give us some pushback, because, we do have other variance requests, which actually our number one variance request is setbacks. But we're not asking you to step in and figure out what all those setback changes are right now. That's actually part of what the zoning code rewrite's doing. But also, those setbacks are there for a reason too. We're probably not going to change them too much. So that's probably why we haven't gone in your direction of like grandfathering in structures or things like that. I think we still want to try to hold to some 25-foot standard, but we want to maybe be a little less restrictive than the 50 feet, which again, that just seemed to catch a lot of people with trying to repurpose those existing buildings.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions?
I guess I just kind of got one question. Am I supposed to say
Commissioner
Madam
Colson?
Chair first?
Go ahead, you're good. You're good.
All right, sorry. Just the one thing I do see is I'm sorry, I don't even know your name to the
Commissioner
right
Roush.
over there, Commissioner Roush, where he brought up talking about how commercial vehicles and stuff like that. I think you are going to have to define something there in defining it. I don't think commercial, like saying, hey, it's a commercial vehicle, I don't think that's going to work, just because I find that a framer or whatever that has just a regular truck has to have commercial plates. So that could get you to where you're you could be in a little bit of a trouble there, in my opinion. I mean, because it could just be a car versus a truck versus, like you said, a front end loader or something like that. Absolutely shouldn't be in that area, but
And the intent behind that, Madam Chair, Commissioner Colson, was really the heavy equipment, as I mentioned, the gravel truck, could be, I mean, I know that we can make some pretty large-size personal vehicles, and Idaho's got a lot of those. And we'll probably see them parked all over these lots. But yeah, I mean, there's some point where that stops and like the gravel truck starts. And I think that's what we were trying to get in here. So if you guys have a suggestion as to, things to explore that way, I'm all ears.
yeah, I think that's just the biggest thing is finding that defining point, because if not, someone's gonna take it all the way to the extreme of one side versus the other, so.
And Madam Chair, I mean, if I was considering a recommendation by the commission, it would be to maybe direct staff to explore that and see if there's an amendment or, a proposed change that could occur here prior to going to the board. I'd be happy to do that, so.
Thank you for that answer. Any other questions from the commissioners?
I'm good.
We've got one person signed up to talk. Is it Jim McMahon? And I apologize if I said your name incorrectly. If you give us your name and your address, and then you've got 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good
to
evening,
talk.
Madam Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Jim McMahon. I live at 4238 North Triple Ridge Place in Eagle, just up by 85 and Highway and Beacon Light. I appear before you tonight because I have a personal interest in the first part of the 3-part pieces that you have here. I'm soliciting to be able to put an extra 450 square feet inside an existing structure, which is 3 times that size already. Yet I'm going through the same process that you'd have to do to build a shopping center or open up a liquor store. Even to the point where I've got to put 4-foot signs out and this sort of stuff. They had 450 feet on the inside of a building that my nearby neighbors not only endorsed, but were kind enough to send letters of endorsement saying that this doesn't make sense. So my action here is simply to tell you that I applaud staff's efforts to try and limit the amount of paperwork and stuff that you all have to go through. I've sat on a number of boards and commissions in my life, and I've got the gray hair to prove it. So I have to understand what it's like to be on the other side of the podium. But at the same time, some of this is just getting down to the point where it's nuisance. I've lost 3 months worth of good construction time waiting for this. And I've got an interior place where construction guys can hardly wait to work when it's snowing outside because it's already heated. It's actually someplace they want to do. So on a personal basis, I would ask that if you're going to send this back for restudy, would you please consider breaking this up into the 3 parts and passing the first part and making the recommendation to it? That's the one most directly affects me, and it doesn't seem to have that much interest or problems for what you had here. With that, I'm open to questions. Otherwise, thank you for allowing me to take an opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the commissioners?
Just one, Madam Chair, just to clarify, I just want to,
Commissioner
thank you, Madam Chair. Just to clarify what your situation is, you said you're building inside of an existing building?
Yes, I have a shop that I built so I could house the 38-foot motorhome, so I don't have to pay for those type of things. And we built a storage area. Unfortunately, I've still got 50 boxes down in a basement in my house that the wife would like to have this moved out, and so I need some additional space to store things, which is why we said, okay, can we add another 450 feet, because it comes straight out from where our existing storage is. So it isn't seen from the outside. I'm the only one who's gonna know it's there. My wife might. But it just seems to me that it's very difficult to ask citizens to go through this very laborious process and lose valuable construction time in my situation without a really good reason. So I applaud staff's efforts to try and economize and make your time working on these things as easy as possible. But this, frankly, should have been a check mark on a form and gone through. Well, I didn't have to appear to build a 1,500-foot building, but I do have to appear to build 450 square feet inside. It seems a little stretched to me.
Your existing structure is how big?
About 1,500 square feet.
Okay, so you're going to be,
I'd be over the 1,500 square foot piece here. But the realities are, is it's inside, it's not visible to the public, and frankly, it would get me out of the doghouse. So I'll leave it with that unless you have something else, Mr. Orchard.
are you on more than an acre?
I have 5 acres.
Okay.
And a 6,000 square foot house. You'd think I'd have enough room to store things.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming down to testify today. Now we go back to additional questions for staff? What questions? Commissioner Roush, you're looking like you have a question?
I'm good.
You're good? What about down here? Any questions? I have questions. So tell me about the process. If we were to say we wanted to have this vehicle defined, could that be something we could say, we could just delegate it to the staff to do, and they could come up with a good definition between now and when you go talk to the commissioners?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioners, that's exactly how you can handle this. You can give specific direction to staff to include language for the board to consider, because ultimately it's their final decision. We were here with a virtual neighborhood meeting discussion a few months ago, and you guys had some language suggested. Hopefully it's not as complex as that, this conversation, but yeah, you could just direct staff to say, hey, here are some things that we think you need to take a closer look at, and offer the board some additional details. And then board ultimately has the final decision. If we get to that point and they're, again, uncomfortable with what staff has proposed, they can hear everything, they can approve in part the ordinance and hold that aside and have us continue to work on it. They can table the whole thing and have us work on it, but yeah, I don't think there's a need at this point to slow this down if you feel like you can give the direction that you want to staff, and I feel like you've already given me some good direction, so.
Okay, so because of where this is at, we can just give the staff direction if we choose to, and then the staff would take that direction and carry it forward to the board?
Yeah,
And it
Madam
wouldn't need
Chair,
to come
that's-
back to us?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. That's the only question I had. Anybody else? Commissioner Birch?
With respect to the comment that was made, I suspect that there is no benefit to breaking this out and having it being considered piecemeal. I don't see anything here that looks controversial, and I would think it's just either all going to go through or it's not. Do you disagree with that?
No, Madam Chair, Commissioner Birch, I 100% agree. I think there's widespread support for this. I think what you're trying to do is help staff create a better code to make our jobs easier in the future when we're trying to give somebody something or not. So I appreciate that interest in being more specific and helping us out. But yeah, there's nothing in here that we've, the one person we've heard from wants this as quickly as possible. So, I think we're in good shape.
Thank you.
While we're having our discussions, I'm wondering if you could move the slide to that one section that has the vehicle language in it, just so everybody can see it while we're sitting here.
I think it's specifically this bottom section here.
Yep.
That you were hoping for maybe some more detail within the ordinance.
So any more questions? Now's our chance to ask questions, and then go ahead, Commissioner Roush.
Madam Chair, Mr. Letson, will you go back to the slide that represented the example of the variation?
Here? Is this?
Yes.
Okay.
So in this application, the parking that's on what I assume is the east side, the left side of the screen, was that for visitors or was that for commercial vehicle parking?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner, that was, I think, employee parking. I think there may have been, but this one's some actual outdoor storage parking for small trailers or things like that. And then this large area here, the white blank area that I've covered up with the text box, that was kind of the outdoor, another function of the outdoor storage area. Again, this is not a to-scale representation of what actually happened with this application. It was just staff's attempt to show, what that 100-foot buffer does to a site like this when you're requesting a contractor yard.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Commissioner Wakeström is looking like he wants to ask a question.
I'm a little slow sometimes. So on that, that's a great example. So you have the parking there. Thank you, Madam Chair. You have the parking on that left side, which is within the buffer zone. It makes sense to have that there. My concern was that they could not build an office or anything in that same area, though. And it doesn't clarify it in the code that it would have to have a 25-foot setback. And I was looking for clarity for somebody
Madam
reading
Chair,
this.
Commissioner Wickstrom, it would be the required setback of the underlying zone. In most of our zones, that's a 25-foot side setback. So we wanted to give the flexibility if someone were proposing a contractor yard in a zone that didn't have a 25-foot, maybe it had like a 20 or a 10. It just had to be built to whatever that zone requires. But on average, the majority of our side setbacks are 25 feet where contractor yards are happening.
But then a parking area would not be subject to that 25-foot setback.
Well, so what we're saying is the parking area for standard vehicles, which you've asked us to better define, would be subject to the setback of the underlying zone. So in
Okay.
this case, could be a 25-foot setback. But if it's a heavy equipment, then we're saying it's got to be at 50 feet, as well as like lay-down yard areas for contractors, or, you know, building supply storage, or, you know, anything else you want to store outside that qualifies as contractor yard.
Okay. But thank you very much for the clarification.
Thank you. Any more questions? Going, gone? Okay, we're gonna close this portion of the meeting and go ahead and I'll entertain, I guess we're closing the public portion of the meeting, and then we'll entertain a motion, if there's a motion, to move forward on this, and then we can have discussion about the motion.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Roush?
Madam Chair, I'm move to recommend approval based upon the findings of fact and conclusions of law contained herein and the testimony from the public hearing. Recommend approval to the board of the proposed amendment to the Ada County Code, project number 2021-02-204 ZOA, with the following directions to staff: to include language with the recommendation to define standard vehicle parking areas or other language to delineate acceptable versus unacceptable use within that buffer zone.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Wickstrom, for the second. What discussion do people have? Any conversations? Any conversations? Commissioner Burke?
So with respect to the definition of standard vehicle parking areas, I'm curious to get Commissioner Roush's input. Are we really concerned about what we call it, or what can actually be parked there? Because, for example, if you're saying that you can have a parking area, that you can have no vehicle in that parking area greater than 1 ton, then you are defining what can go in the parking area. Whereas if you simply say that you will have standard vehicle parking areas, you could have the parking area that would be considered standard vehicle, you could park anything in there.
Right.
So are you concerned about what would be parked there? And are you talking about defining it in a way such as nothing more than 1 ton?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Birch, yeah, that's my thoughts and concerns. I just felt like the lack of a definition for that verbiage of standard vehicle parking areas would leave it open for broad interpretation from an end user who might propose something and not really define what that use is in that buffer zone, and have a nuisance vehicle, what the neighbors would probably consider a nuisance vehicle, heavy equipment, something pulling in and parking, backing up, and that sort of thing within those areas. So delineating between like an acceptable use, like Commissioner Colson brought up, a contractor's commercial vehicle doesn't necessarily work, because you could have a smart car with commercial plates on it, and then that's not, that wouldn't be, in my mind, a good way to delineate it. And I certainly see why the staff probably had a hard time defining it, because, I was reviewing it and thought non-commercial vehicle was a great way to delineate it until Commissioner Colson's comments, so.
So the
Birch, go ahead.
So the direction to staff is not how you define the area, but how you define what could be parked in that area. Because, for example, a Fred Meyer parking lot is standard vehicle parking area. You could park anything you wanted in that parking lot.
So that's a good point, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Commissioner Birch. Commissioner Roush, do you have any comments?
No.
Okay. Any other comments? Any other comments? Commissioner Birch, do you want to amend the motion, or do you want to ask Commissioner Roush to change it, or where do you want to go from?
Commissioner Roush is so much more articulate.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Roush.
Madam Chair, I would move to amend the direction.
You could actually withdraw your motion and redo it too.
Okay.
So that works. You just have to do it once.
Commissioner, Madam Chair, I would move to withdraw my motion,
Okay,
and I would like to make a new motion. Based upon the findings of fact and conclusions of law contained herein and the testimony from the public hearing, the commission recommends approval to the board of the proposed amendment to the Ada County Code, project number 2021-02204 ZOA, with the following directions to staff: to include language with the recommendation to define the uses and types of vehicles within the standard vehicle parking area, or other language to replace standard vehicle parking area.
thank you very much. Great motion. Is there a second for that?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Birch seconded. Good job, guys. Any more discussion? Okay, seeing no more discussion, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say aye. So let the record reflect that all 7 commissioners voted for the motion, and it's approved. Thank you very much. The next item of business is 202-102-522. It's the Idaho Department of Fish and Game, and Mr. Danielson is going to present that for us.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, project number 2021-02522 CU-MSB is a conditional use and master site plan application for an archery range in the Rural Preservation District. The property is located off East Highland Valley Road in Section 26, Township 3 North, Range 3 East, and contains approximately 400 acres. The archery range is an existing mile-long course that consists of 20 targets. The applicant is proposing to add a new 168-square-foot vault toilet to the site. When completed, the range will consist of a gravel parking lot, fencing, signage, a 160-square-foot storage container, 168-square-foot vault toilet, and the seasonal placement of up to 4 static targets and 20 3D targets along 1 mile trail. The range will be operated during daylight hours from May 1st to November 15th in concurrence with the opening and closing of Highland Valley Road. The applicant is requesting a waiver from the landscaping and screening requirements. The request for the waiver is justified because the property is not located in an irrigation district and does not have any water. In addition, the property is a part of the Boise River Wildlife Management Area, and thus the existing native foothills landscaping is preferred over traditional landscaping materials. Staff is supportive of this waiver. The property is not located within an area of city impact, therefore the applicable comprehensive plan is the Ada County Comprehensive Plan. The comprehensive plan designates the site as state and federal rangeland, and hiking, hunting, fishing, and other recreational uses are secondary uses on state rangeland, thus the use is compatible with the comprehensive plan. The archery range is in compliance with the Ada County Code as it complies with the findings of fact for conditional uses and master site plans and the specific use standards for public or quasi-public use. The Treasure Valley Bow Hunters did provide comments in Exhibit 29 saying that they're in favor of the installation of the restroom. There is no agency opposition to this application. The key condition for this condition of approval is that the applicant will need to obtain a building permit for the vault toilet. Staff finds that this application complies with the Ada County Code and the Ada County Comprehensive Plan, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you very much. What questions do we have? No questions?
Just one question.
Go ahead, Commissioner
Madam Chair.
Wickstrom.
Are they using porta potties, or are there any facilities up there right now that they're using?
I don't believe so. So this is a much needed, the vault toilet is much needed, to obviously be installed there to provide restroom facilities for people that are using the archery range or for people hiking up in that area.
Okay, that's it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Do we have anybody in the audience online that would like to talk about this?
Madam Chair,
Go ahead. Commissioner Roush?
are we going to hear from the applicant?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought they were the applicant. Sorry. I apologize. So go ahead, the applicant can come forward. We were just going to rush it through for you. Give us your name and address.
My name is Brad Lowe, live at 6338 East Brimley Drive in Nampa, Idaho. Thanks for the opportunity to present information on the Boise River Wildlife Management Area 3D Archery Range. And thanks, Brent, for all your help putting this, helping us work through the process. As I mentioned, my name is Brad Lowe. I'm the Regional Habitat Manager in our Southwest region. And I'll admit up front, we are playing a bit of catch-up. There was some confusion regarding the need to obtain a permit for the archery range. Consequently, we're here to propose an archery range that already exists. We opened this range in the spring of 2019 with the assistance from local archery clubs and the city of Boise. How did you get this to work, the light? So, as Brent mentioned, you advanced one too far there, Brent. The proposed range is located northeast of Boise on the Boise River Wildlife Management Area. The entirety of the range is on Idaho Fish and Game property. The range, it shows up on the wall, but not on the screen. No, that's great. The red circle is the actual archery range loop. To access the range, you would travel up Highway 21, which is kind of on this bottom right side, and then turn up to the west on East Highland Valley Road. As was mentioned, the road is managed by Fish and Game. It's open seasonally from May 1st through November 15th. Consequently, the range is open during that time. The range consists, as was mentioned, of 20 3D targets and 4 static practice targets. All targets are actually removed from the site when the range is not open. To accommodate use, a parking lot was installed, and you can switch to the next slide. And a small storage container is used to house maintenance equipment and the actual targets. You can hit the next slide. Parking lot was developed in an already disturbed location. What was not disturbed was actually in poor vegetative condition, kind of cheatgrass and other weeds that were impacted by user-created trails emanating from the parking lot, and that picture kind of shows it. It should look like the more brown areas around it, but it's actually kind of yellow and white because of some of that stuff. Go to the next slide. Similarly, the targets were placed along existing roads and trails. The southern portion of the loop was along a then closed, decommissioned road. Then on the west side, traveling to the north, was on a single track trail. And the east portion of the loop was partly on the Highland Valley Road and partly on a user-created trail on the other side of the creek. There is an intermittent stream there, which is in that light blue that travels from the north to the kind of southeast, that runs along the eastern portion of that loop. The trail crosses the stream in 2 locations, kind of at the beginning and at the end, as you might expect. But typically that stream has very little water during those periods of time when the range is actually in operation. Short of maybe some high water years. But we were made aware of the need for additional permitting when we were actually discussing the installation of a vault toilet. The vault toilet is intended to be placed at the southwestern corner of the existing parking lot. So down in the bottom right, purple triangle depicts the parking lot, and you can kind of see from your vantage point there the location of the vault toilet. You can go to the next slide. The proposed vault toilet's a pretty standard 2-vault toilet made of prefabricated concrete. Use of the archery range was substantially greater than expected, which has led to the need for these additional services. The archery range receives roughly 5,000 archers per year, on top of about the same number, a little bit more hikers, mountain bikers, et cetera. So it services roughly 10,000 people annually. Next slide. The archery range provides a unique opportunity for a family-based recreation on the WMA. Next slide. To develop skills in a scenario-based environment. This experience provides a more lifelike setting within which archers can hone their skills. The range uses a variety of different species for targets. A 3D range had previously been established on City of Boise property, but has since been replaced by a static range on the Military Reserve property. Consequently, the installation of this range timed out fairly well to kind of match that shift in use on the city range, and provides the public a 3D archery range in relatively close proximity to Boise. That's all I've got. I'll stand for questions.
Thank you very much. What questions do the commissioners have? Commissioner Roush,
Madam Chair.
go ahead.
First of all, Mr. Lowe, thank you for being here tonight and this presentation, and also for the 3D range. As a user of that range, I appreciate it. I do have one question for you regarding the vault toilet. So in my experience, other vault toilets across Idaho have experienced, abuse and
Vandalism.
vandalism. Thank you. So, what do you have a plan in place to mitigate that, or are you just relying solely on self-policing and citizens reports?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Roush. Yeah, it's sort of the inevitable with publicly available vault toilets. However, we have intentions of doing something slightly different that has worked in other areas of the state. We have a local high school who intends to use their art students to then paint murals on the inside of the outhouse, which in eastern Idaho, yeah, in the Salmon area has worked remarkably well to cut down on vandalism. I expect it to cut down on vandalism. I'm sure it's somewhat inevitable. We've discussed putting a lock on the outhouse to close it during those periods of time when staff are not present. That WMA provides significant habitat for wintering mule deer, which is the point of the WMA to a large extent. And so staff tries not to spend much time up that road to avoid disturbance. So.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Commissioner Roush.
One other follow-up question. So, if memory serves me correctly, there's a gate at the end of that road as you're coming off of, 21? And so that's locked as well during those closure periods. So you're talking, in addition to that, the vault toilet itself will have a locking mechanism just for that annual closure.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Roush, correct. I don't have details for that. We haven't decided whether that's exactly the route we want to go. That may actually create more unintended vandalism, people trying to break in to use it. But yes, it is an option being considered.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner Hill?
Just a question,
Sorry,
Madam Chair.
yes,
So we're just approving the vault toilets, so the permit for the actual range, that's already been taken care of or to be taken care of?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Wickstrom, this would be for the archery range itself along with the vault toilet. So you're kind of approving everything.
Any other questions for the applicant? I'd like to say that I've hike through a section of that, and we were really surprised to find it because it wasn't on the hiking map. So it's a really cool, amenity up there. So that's my feedback. So any other questions? Okay, I think we'll let you go. Thank you. Now I'll ask if there's anybody in the room that wants to make comments about this application. And I don't see anybody in the room, and I don't see anybody online. So there's no questions from the other people about this application. So do we have additional questions we have for Mr. Danielson?
Madam Chair, before you close the public hearing, we'd want to enter the applicant's PowerPoint into the record, and so this will be exhibit number 30.
Okay, so we'll enter that as exhibit number 30. And so do we have any questions for Mr. Danielson? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Danielson, so on the information here, they're going to have parking for 40 cars. Is there any, I'm looking at it and I don't see where 40 cars can fit in there. Is that really, I don't know if that's necessarily a problem, but it looks like it's going to get a lot of use and be a popular place. Is there anything where they have to mark out cars for parking or do anything to make sure they can accommodate the people that will be going up there?
So Madam Chair, Commissioner Wickstrom, so they are required to have and basically provide signage for an ADA accessible parking space. And then with these other parking spaces, it'd be, similar to other trailheads that you'll see, there may be, wheel stops along the perimeter, so the wheel stops would kind of indicate, even though it's a gravel parking area, the wheel stops would somewhat indicate, individual parking spaces.
Good, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Roush?
Mr. Danielson, so in these public use applications and the issues with vault toilets, I don't know if that's something the county has experienced. That's something I've mostly seen on other agency regulated. Is there anything that the county's in any way the county regulates that or manages that or provides feedback to applicants?
So one of the, Madam Chair, Commissioner Roush, one of the conditions of approval that we have is that Central District Health has to approve of the installation. So Central District Health is kind of the health agency that's going to regulate the public health aspect of it. So I mean, with the vault toilet, the biggest concern that we have is always making sure that where the vault toilet's going, it's not going to harm, groundwater or be of some other kind of environmental health risk. And so that's why we have a condition for the Central District Health Department to kind of, because they're kind of the agency that regulates they regulate septic systems, et cetera. So they're going to be the ones that will regulate the location of that, vault toilet and make sure that the proper precautions are taken care of in terms of installing it and making sure that it's going to function, as it should.
So any other additional questions? Commissioner Roush, did that answer your question?
Madam Chair, yes, it did. Thank you.
Good. Anybody else? Any other questions? So if we don't have any more questions for Mr. Danielson, I'll invite the applicant, if there was anything that's been said that you'd like to provide a rebuttal on or have additional comments, you have this opportunity to make additional comments, or you can pass. You're going to pass, okay. So there's no more comments from the applicant, so Commissioners, I think we're ready to close the public hearing. And so we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing, and I'll look for a motion from one of the commissioners.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Exton, go ahead. My brain's not as quick tonight.
Based upon the findings of fact and conclusions of law contained herein and the testimony from the public hearing, I move to approve project 2021-02-522 CUMSP, subject to the conditions of approval attached as Exhibit A in the master site plan dated August 16th, 2021.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Exton. Is there a second?
Second.
And there's a second from Commissioner Brown. So what conversations do we want to have?
I back Commissioner Roush on and thank you for doing that. I've got a lot of family members and utilize that, and I think it's great. So glad to see that we're expanding on those things to get more kids out and doing activities like that and families doing activities like that. So I commend the Fish and Game and everybody involved in making an area like that available to our residents and our kids. It's really important, so thank you.
Commissioner Roush?
Madam Chair, yeah, I do want to reiterate or state for the first time that that was actually the first 3D target I'd ever utilized when practicing my archery. So it was really cool that it came from, you know, a public resource. And I would also like to acknowledge the Treasure Valley Bow Hunters and their comment that they provided. Yeah, certainly this provides great service for the community.
So thank you. Any other comments?
I'd like to thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to think that the people that are going to be going up there that are using the range, I think that's a different type of person, and I think I agree with your the potential for vandalism and those types of things. But I think if there's regular usage up there, and then the people that are they're going to take pride because it is such a unique event and place to go. So that hopefully that'll protect that.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I agree, 100%. Any other comments? I don't see any more comments, so I'm going to go ahead and call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say aye. So let the record reflect that all 7 commissioners voted for the motion, and it passes. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Danielson. The next item, it looks like the staff recommendation is to table. It's 202-102-2577 CU MSP. So is there a motion from one of the commissioners?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Exton.
I'd like to table application 202102577 CUMSP to the next meeting.
It's been moved to table the motion until the next meeting. And I'm wondering if I can ask the staff to look up the next meeting date for us so that we can.
December 9th.
December 9th. Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Colson seconded the motion. Any conversations? All those in favor of tabling this motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say aye. And let the record reflect that every commissioner, all 7 of them, voted for the motion. The next item is the minutes from October 14th, 2021. I wasn't here, so I'll abstain from voting, but is there somebody that can provide a motion for those minutes?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Brown?
I would like to motion for approval of minutes from meeting from November 10th.
Well,
Or
October.
I'm
4th.
sorry, from,
Yeah.
I'm looking wrong. Yeah, October 14th,
Yep.
2021.
Thank you very much. So Commissioner Brown moves to approve the minutes from October 14th, 2021. Are there any, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Commissioner Exton seconded the motion. Is there any discussion? I don't see any discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And any opposed? And let the record reflect that I abstained. So the next item is the review of the Ada County Commissioners meeting, which
Yes.
happened yesterday, or the 10th.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioners, happened on November 10th, actually, and so there were 4 items. First one was tabled. It was for a variance. The reason for tabling was to include an accessory use application, which wasn't included initially, and the majority of comments received on the project are more germane to an accessory use application than a variance itself. So we'll be seeing that at the following hearing with the board. Second item was a variance for an access easement platted on Model Farm Acre subdivision off of Model Farm Drive. That was approved. Third item was a time extension for Shadow Valley Estates subdivision, which is in the Eagle Foothills area. That was approved as well. And then finally, there was a time extension for a master site plan for self-service storage facility, which was also approved. And that's it.
So does anybody have any questions? I don't see any questions. Is there any other, go ahead, Commissioner Rouse.
Madam Chair, I did have a question. I was just recently in the news was the Avamore subdivision and their potential annexation into the city of Eagle. Is there any impact to this commission with that or considerations?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, the impact would be if it's in someone else's jurisdiction, you wouldn't be weighing in on it. That's probably the best answer I have. You know, you're gonna see likely other developments along that corridor and in those foothills. But yeah, there's no impact to this board for Avamore. I mean, that decision's been made a long time ago. The portion that was in our county and Boise County just recently, as you're aware, approved an extension into their jurisdiction. But yeah, nothing for you that I can see.
Thanks for the question. Any other questions? So is there any other issues that need to come before the board? I don't see any. So I'm going to declare the meeting adjourned, and we'll see everybody December 9th. So have a great Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you.